Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to Kaiser Watch.
Jim, pleasure to be back on the show.
John, what did the final results from Endurance Gold's RC drill program at Reliance tell us?
Well, the final results reported this week show that they now have 400 meters of mineralized strike. They call it the Eagle Zone. The Eagle South Zone has now become also an extension of the Eagle Zone, with a very important fact that they call the 0-to-0 zone. So the way you'll imagine this zone is dipping 35 degrees to the southwest, heading up the hill in a southeast direction, and they've now tracked it for 400 meters. That's the Eagle Zone, and it runs 10 to 15 meters thick, and it grades really good gold values from 5 grams per ton up to like 20 grams per ton sometimes. But the important thing is that about halfway up the hill, it starts to steepen, and they believe that it's like a flexure, the shallow dipping zone, which runs out of room to the west because there's a thrust fault in that area. But after 200 meters of that, it starts to steepen. And that's very important because this is treated as an epizonal orogenic gold system, which means that in the vertical dimension, gold mineralization can persist to sometimes thousands of meters. So a big challenge has always been for this project, is this going to be just, several 100,000 high-grade ounces that never reach critical mass? Well, they're now showing that the mineralization is still strong at the end of the 400-meter strike that they've established so far. They've got their road zigzagging up the hill. They're channel sampling that. And the core drilling program, which is 8,000 meters, they have now drilled 5 holes for about 1,100 meters, relatively shallow. They are focused on that 0-to-0 zone where it steepens, and they're testing the continuity, and they're also getting the geology from the core drilling, which you cannot get from the RC. The only downside is we don't get any sneak previews based on arsenic readings from the XRF units, because when you're dealing with core, it's not as reliable as when you are dealing with a bag of RC chips. So this project, it's going full bore. Everything's going great. They'll be drilling all through summer. They have plenty of money to continue this, to persist with this program. And we should start getting the core results, maybe early August. And of course, if they become more aggressive and start stepping up the hill, extending the strike, and also drilling deeper holes to see what happens at depth, that's the main thing. People will want to see that the 0-20 zone, as you drill deeper, it continues to persist, continues to have good grades. And they will also probably go back down the hill towards Carpenter Lake, where there are some areas that have never been drilled between the Imperial Zone and the Eagle Zone. They may go there and put some holes in there just to see what is going on. So excellent final results for the RC drilling program. Now we're focused on the core drilling to see what that's going to tell us about this project. I think this project in the summer with this drilling, this is when this will really be recognized as an emerging discovery with 1 million ounce plus potential of medium to high grade gold.
John, Copper Lake reported very high silver grades for its Marshall Lake project. What does it mean, and what happens next?
Okay, just some background first. I started covering Copper Lake resources earlier this year when they reported results from a hole finished or almost finished at the very end of last year that was drilling a VTEM anomaly to the southeast of the Billiton deposit. Now, the Billiton deposit was discovered in the 50s at Marshall Lake. This is in western Ontario, and it's about 2.2 million tons of, decent grade, but it needs to be about 4 times bigger to be worth developing. So the majors lost interest in it during the 80s. 2 juniors ended up with it, Copper Lake Resources at 75% and Rainy Mountain Royalty at 25%. And historically, the focus has all been to about 250 meter depth, which is where the Billiton VMS zone sits. It's a copper zinc lead type of system with a silver component. And the limit has always been geophysics. And then last year, in 2021, they recruited Don Hoy as the exploration VP. He did a data compilation of all the historical work and decided, if we're going to find anything big here, we're going to have to go deeper than anybody has ever gone. Recommended geophysical surveys. They did that. And in an area to the southeast of the Billiton zone where there's never been any drilling, this big, deep IP anomaly showed up. And so that's what this program was all about. That first hole that they tested the VTEM target. The VTEM target itself didn't appear to be anything, but they did higher up, shallower than expected, intersect high-grade VMS mineralization. But the two main holes that everybody was holding their breath for, 2201 and 2202. Well, 2201 encountered 6 intervals of semi to massive sulfide mineralization, but it did not hit, and these are relatively short intervals of 1.5 to 6 meters, and hole 2 didn't hit anything of much interest. And the market, when these visuals were reported, the market kind of sagged and the stock dropped below a dime in early May, where it has pretty much languished ever since. Now on June 14th, they reported the partial results for the hole 22-1. And there were some good numbers in there. There were a couple of intervals, roughly about 2 meters long, that ran 6 to 8% copper and 7% zinc. And what was interesting was the silver assays were still pending. And the reason they were pending is apparently they were so high that the assay lab said, we better check these to make sure that there isn't some lab problem responsible for these numbers. And those came out on June 23rd. And this has put a little bit of life back into the company because these numbers were quite spectacular. Of the 6 intervals, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th intervals in the bottom third of the hole, they had 171 to 241 gram per silver, which is about 5 to 8 ounce per ton. But the bottom 6 meters, this was interesting because it had sort of lower copper and zinc than the other ones, but it came in at 413 gram over the entire 6 meters, or 13 ounces per ton. But within that was a 1.21 meter interval that was 1580 grams per ton, or 51 ounce per ton. $1,000 rock value just for the silver component. Now, normally when you see flashy numbers like that, the market jumps into it, everybody gets excited. But we're still in a bear market right now where people actually say, okay, what is the geological context? What does that hang together with? We were expecting some big, massive sulfide intersection based on the deep IP target. We did not get it. The company did do borehole surveys after it completed the final hole. They were not able to do it on the hole 22-1 because by the time they got to it, the spring thaw had made that hole inaccessible. But the downhole probes that they did on the other holes showed that there are at least 4 strong conductors down there in that 200 to 300 meter depth. The hole seems to have just missed these conductors. So we're dealing with smaller conductors, smaller sulfide bodies than we were hoping for. But when we're dealing with these grades of 5 to 8% copper, 7% zinc, and very high silver numbers, you don't need a very large discovery. And a 2.5 million ton 21B zone, such as is at the SK Creek project. This is easy to be hiding in this target area that has now been lit up with this downhole geophysical probes. These high-grade intersections, they're short, but this area has undergone fairly intense folding. So there's been remobilization of the massive sulfides. So everything can be a little squirrely in the beginning until you sort of figure out where everything ended up. It's a little bit simpler at SK Mining's project, where you have these gentle, like long folds that create these anticlines, but there you have the complexity that you've had thrust faulting, slicing chunks of it and shoving it over top of each other, so that the layer cake is a bunch of layers stacked on top of each other, which can make things a little bit more complicated. But here it's more complicated. However, they do know now that this area to the southeast of the Billiton deposit, it's got a footprint large enough to host a significant deposit. They are planning to go drill by the end of July. This is an area where they can drill year-round. It's not like some of these other swampy areas where you can only drill during winter. Their big issue is their financials just came out, and I looked at them and said, you guys have no money left. You've got about $240 million fully diluted. So what are you going to do? And Terry McDonald says, well, we have to bite the bullet. We have to do a financing. We hope to raise $2 million very, very soon in a combination of flow-through and hard dollars, and get drilling right away. Because in this sort of market that we have now, if you're not drilling targets that have the potential to really change the fundamental value of the company, this market's going to ignore you. So watch for a financing to happen. Don Hoy wants to do another some sort of ground loop EM survey that can see down to 300 meters, so he has some additional geophysical context, so that when they do start drilling holes into this area, that they can interpret what it is that they are getting or not getting, and focus the holes better. But this is now gearing up for a potential significant discovery contingent on getting the financing. It appears that their partner, Rainy Mountain Royalty, is now in default. It has not paid its 25% share of the budget, which is one reason why Copper Lake's treasury is down to next to nothing. But on the other hand, this now dilutes Rainy Mountain from about 25% to roughly 21%. Copper Lake goes up to 79%. And Terry McDonald has stopped fretting about manana stories about, the check's in the mail, we'll get it to you soon, because now they're getting closer to the 90% mark, where this then converts to 10%. When they get down to when Rainy Mountain gets down to 10%, then it converts to a 1% NSR, which in this case is really good for Copper Lake, because apparently they can buy it back for $1 million. So Rainy Mountain is now going to face a tough period here. They're going to have to cough up money or dilute further. They may want to wait until there's a no-brainer discovery hole staring them in the face before they chip in again. But they've had to take that 4% dilution in their stake in this project, so they didn't have to dilute their stock to pay for this program, which has created geological context for expecting a discovery, not a Monster Kid Creek scale discovery, but still something in that arena of an SK Creek 21B zone type of discovery. Not so far, no evidence of the high gold component, but similar to the high-grade silver that we're so far seeing in the TV and Jeff zones at SK Mining's project in the Golden Triangle, which is now also drilling well underway. The earlier start than last year, everything's going great. So that's another company that within a couple of months should be able to start flowing information. The theme this summer is, if you're not drilling, just go away and come back for when this general market anxiety has disappeared and they've got their interest rates way up there and finally have to stop reversing it. If you're going to buck the trend, you need to be drilling and in a position to change what we understand about the deposit or system that you already have.
John, did Adamera Minerals ever get a permit so it can start drilling Buckhorn 2.0 this summer?
They just put out a press release saying they are mobilizing a drill for Buckhorn 2.0, which is in northeastern Washington. It basically surrounds the original Buckhorn 1.0 deposit that that was mined by Kinross. It was found by Crown Resources Group back in I think the late 80s or early 90s. It went through this endless open pit permitting period where they just couldn't get the permit. The other partners eventually gave up, and Crown went back in and said, okay, let's do an underground mine. And then Kinross ended up doing a takeover bid of Crown and developed this mine using its existing Kettle River mill that it had inherited through the Echo Bay takeover. And that was one of its most profitable mines that in its history that it has ever mined. And this property, they wanted to keep it going, and they had done a lot of work. Historically, it has 281 drill holes on it, 50,000 meters of drilling, supposedly $12 million worth of value, and they had applied for an incredible permit to drill 700 plus holes on this property to make sure that there isn't another crown jewel lurking around. The crown jewel is a skarn type deposit, and that whole area has had historical exploration, but not as much as the Republic Graben to the east. This area has lots of little rat holes that have been dug by old timers chasing a snippet here or there. But until the junior made this discovery of a significant skarn-hosted gold deposit, this area has never had the history that the Republic Graben has, which has produced 5-10 million ounces during its lifetime. And in terms of upside potential, I've done a outcome visualization where I say, okay, well, what if they found a clone to Buckhorn 1.0? And that would have been a 3.5 million ton deposit of about 12.6 gram per ton gold. And suppose they get a same 900 ton per day underground mine permitted, truck it over to the old Kettle River mill. Well, at the current gold price of 1,819 or whatever it is, what would that be worth today? Well, it would be worth 1 billion Canadian dollars, which based on how much 242 million fully diluted, that's a $4 Canadian stock price for Adamera Minerals. It's trading 6 cents. So this is not quite a 100-bagger potential, but we're definitely talking a 10-bagger potential if they can go in there and make a new discovery. Now, they're dealing with 3 permitting bodies. They've got the state permitting body, they've got the BLM, and they've got the U.S. Forest Service. The announcement they just put out is for drilling 17 targets that have been permitted on the state and the BLM ground, but their bond has been accepted. So they've got $1 million in the treasury, and they figure, well, this is good enough to test 10 of these targets. Mark Alibaba remains optimistic that the U.S. Forest Service will eventually grant permits for the other targets. Some of them he would prioritize and push ahead of the queue of this summer program. And the Buckhorn 2.0 project area, it really can only be drilled sort of March to October. So they're happy to go in there now, crossing their fingers that forest fires aren't going to change them out. But they are drilling this for the first time in more than a decade. Kinross never got around to really doing any work when its permitting hit the wall and eventually shut the mine down and let all the surrounding claims lapse, which Adamera has staked. Adamera did a deal that gave it access last year to the Kinross database, and this has been like a tremendous saving of time and money. And these guys have been like in a candy shop compiling all this data, and they've been doing geophysical surveys on top of this and finding targets correlated with geochemical data that have never had any drill holes in them. So this is going to be shaping up to be a great summer exploration program with the potential to deliver another crown jewel, perhaps something even better. And again, it'll probably take a couple of months for us to get any visuals telling us that they've hit something very, very interesting. These are skarn-type targets that they are going after. But if we do, this could be a major discovery play. And Mark says, well, if it's good enough, we can probably figure out how to work there in winter also. So cross our fingers that we get one of these super summer discoveries for Adamera Minerals at Buckhorn 2.0, and that that they end up being able to drill right through winter, not having to take a break. And let's hope that the U.S. Forest Service also comes through with the permits so that they can test all the top priority targets as soon as possible.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser. I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.